Hello everyone, welcome to my Batman Arkham Asylum, hard difficulty, no damage walkthrough. This is the Penetentiary area, and this is one of the shorter areas of the game, and it's nothing but combat. There are no Predator encounters in the Penitentiary area, and we are being introduced to a new enemy type, which you don't encounter so much in the main story. You mainly encounter them in the open world after this sequence. But this is the Arkham inmates. These are not the Blackgate prisoners. These are the actual residents of Arkham Asylum, like the ones actually confined within Arkham Asylum. And back when I first played this game, I was very young, so I was not used to the very idea of horror like I am right now. But this scene right here is really cool. The music choice, the choice of environment, just the way these Arkham inmates are imprisoned, and you're just seeing them just further degrade in this supposed hospital. It's rather unsettling, and you really have to wonder what the guards and what the people managing this facility have been doing, because it's clear they haven't been doing anything to help out these individuals. Like, they've been so, like, filled with hatred towards these individuals, they haven't even gone out of their way to help them. And to think they would try to imprison the Blackgate prisoners and the supervillains in this facility and consider them clinically insane. That just seems rather bizarre to me, especially when you consider just what I've just described. And I think this is really the point where I need to talk about Batman's moral code, because I have nothing against Batman's moral code. Like, Batman's moral code really demonstrates a strong character. It really demonstrates someone who has gone far beyond the typical base impulses of individuals. Like, killing people is such a base and animalistic impulse of us that, you know, when people say, oh, killing people is just a necessary option, like, killing people is the right thing to do, that is just such a easy way out. And Batman doesn't favor the easy way out. Like, he wants to favor a model that actually feels like it has benefit to the future and actually benefiting the next generation. Because if you fight killing with more killing, you're just going to perpetuate the cycle of killing. And this is something that I really hate about a lot of the animated films and a lot of these films featuring Batman, because Batman never ever goes on these really, like, impactful soliloquies or massive speeches regarding why he favors the kind of moral code he does. He just remains very silent about it, and you're sending the wrong message with that. Like, there should have been some kind of moment where Batman is put into some state where he has to express why he favors this moral code, and they touched upon this a bit in Batman Under the Red Hood, and he touched upon it very vaguely, though, where he said that if I allow myself to go down into that place, I'll never come back, like staring into the abyss. You know, there's a line we don't cross when it comes to killing people and the like. Like, he's going to become just as impulsive and just as prone to rage as all these other thugs that he's beating up. Like, just imagine if you were a normal civilian in this case. Just imagine if you didn't have the same level of impulse control that Batman has, and that's why he doesn't kill. Like, imagine just going to a supermarket and someone just pisses you off for no reason. You're going to favor the option of killing them because you've ingrained that into your head to make that the easy alternative. And so it's become such a habit that you're more likely to embrace that option. And that's why you're most likely going to act out in the wrong sort of way. You're going to attack the wrong people. People don't recognize this. Like, people think it's very easy to control these kind of things, but it isn't. That's not how the human brain works. And I feel like Batman understands the psychology of individuals enough to not embrace the whole idea of killing someone. And, like, simply killing someone off is not as simple as it seems. Like, that's what he told Wonder Woman in Injustice 2. Like, when she was talking about, like, killing the Joker, Batman said it was never that simple. Because the Joker's legacy is still a thing in Gotham. Like, he still has followers, he still has people that follow his beliefs, because there are people that genuinely believe in his ideas because they almost fall in line with the idea of freedom. And this is touched upon a bit in the Injustice movie that everyone hated, but contrary to what a lot of people say about that film, I actually enjoyed it compared to the most recent films we've gotten in the DC universe, because I feel like a lot of the most recent DC Universe films they don't have any level of seriousness to them, and a lot of them just feel like jokes, and they make the characters seem like jokes with their really weird senses of humor, and then, like, a lot of the core beliefs that the characters believe in are just not touched upon properly, and there's just so many, like, moments worthy of cringe. I don't know why they've been favoring this option with the most recent DC Universe animated films, but Injustice was really the first film in a long time that actually had me intrigued, where some of that seriousness that was put into the characters from the likes of Justice League or Justice League Animated or Justice League Unlimited or all those other films, like with the original Batman movies that take place during the events of Batman the Animated Series. Like, some of that was kind of restored in Injustice. I mean, like, if you're familiar with the comic series Injustice, you'll obviously hate the film, but not thinking about that, and when you're considering the moral dilemmas between Superman and Batman, like, Batman is always going to be right, and, you know, like, Superman turned into a villain because he let killing become such a naturally ingrained process in his mind that it almost felt like the right thing to do, and he was never considering other options because he was always taking the easy way out. He never, ever considered other alternatives. And the thing is that people like to consider the easy alternative because the way we've structured our society does not allow us to favor all these other options that are morally better, but, like, financially they're bad. Like, I think that's another reason why Batman's moral code is often clashed with by other people, is because they don't, like, they consider the financial consequences, like trying to incarcerate individuals. They consider that if they break out, they'll do these other bad things. But it's not just Batman who is engaging in this whole process of trying to confine the criminals. Like, the police are involved as well. Everyone in the government is involved as well. It's just like, with the way the writers structured Gotham to be, like, so different to how a real-world city works. Like, the government is somehow very corrupt. The police officers, like, every single one of them just accepts bribes and will always be criminal in their behaviors. Like, that's just something I was going to touch upon between Spider-Man and Batman. But the sense of community is what separates Batman from Spider-Man. Like, Batman doesn't embrace the sense of community as much as Spider-Man does. Like, when Spider-Man is out fighting crime, he actually, like, inspires the community to follow his beliefs. Like, the way he presents himself in such a positive manner compared to Batman. Like, and, like, you hear a lot in these movies and in the comic series that it just feels like crime skyrockets under Batman, whereas crime seems to fall under Spider-Man. And I think that's likely due to the writer's choice, or maybe, like, the writers are so subconsciously, like, drawn in by the dark atmosphere that they want to preserve that by having crime skyrocket under Batman's rules, and then it just gives them more excuses to make Batman look like a fool, this and that. But that's not realistic in the slightest. But then with Spider-Man, because the writers are a lot more positive, and, you know, they embrace the whole idea of, like, community being a huge part of what it means to be a superhero. Like, there's a definite, like, line drawn between Batman and Spider-Man when it comes to their idea of being a hero. And that's why, like, Spider-Man feels more like a superhero compared to Batman. Like, Batman seems to be, like, fighting these criminals with an almost one-dimensional sense to how everything will turn out. Like, he's thinking if the criminals are incarcerated, then everything will be fine. But I just feel like Batman has never gone out of his way to really think deeply about how you properly stop crime without ever having to kill anyone. And it's funny because they touched upon this briefly in Batman Arkham Origins. In Batman Arkham Origins, Alfred constantly says that Bruce is not an island, he's a man, and a man is only as strong as the friends he keeps around him. And for some reason, they never touched upon this in Batman Arkham Knight, because a lot of the characters that he fights alongside with, his allies, he just leaves them alone. Like, he never seeks their help. He's always confining them to some other, like, menial task. And, like, maybe it's because he doesn't want to see them suffer after Jason Todd, but then again, like, Jason Todd's introduction into Arkham Knight was very jarring, and it came out of nowhere, and I just feel like a lot of the behaviors that Batman displays in Arkham Knight are just forced, just not even considering the proper continuity of events that take place. Yes, he was reeling from the loss of Joker, this and that, but then with Jason Todd's introduction, and that we're just constantly seeing Jason Todd and all these memories just conveniently, and then Batman's just talking about Jason Todd for some reason. Like, it's so forceful and so jarring, if you know what I mean, which definitely was a great disservice to Arkham Origins, which really tried to establish just one part of Batman that would have definitely helped him understand how to fight crime better. Because I believe Batman was quite inexperienced with fighting crime during the time of Arkham Origins. Like, we see this constantly when he knocks out people he's trying to interrogate a little too early. Like, he knocks them out because he's choking them a little too much. Or when he constantly says that he can handle things himself, yet Alfred keeps telling him that he is a man, not an island. Like, that was definitely something worthy of consideration when considering Batman's moral code. But that's just the main thing as well. Like, Batman, I totally support the idea that he is like embracing this whole idea of not killing criminals, but it's just that the manner in which he tries to go out of his way to fight crime while still maintaining his moral code is very flawed, because I think he's a little one-dimensional with how he wants to approach crime compared to how Spider-Man does. And I think Spider-Man does it unintentionally, or maybe like he does it intentionally, but we never see any moments where he's acknowledging that community is a very important part of actually ensuring that crime is reduced significantly in a city. And I think when you consider that, that's definitely where the line is drawn, where Batman definitely seems more like a vigilante compared to Spider-Man, who's more like a superhero. And ironically, my dad told me about this because he's read the original Spider-Man comics, but Spider-Man was more isolated compared to how he's portrayed right now. And that's purely a consequence of the time it was released in, because I think the original Spider-Man comics were released in a time where America was still recovering from the from World War II. And, you know, like the writers had a different idea with Spider-Man, but then they decided to change his character entirely to someone who actually feels more like a superhero. So, someone who actually is able to convey a sense of community with the way his personality is expressed, with his more jovial personality, and with his color choices, and with the way he tries to like interact with the community. Like they established this nicely in Spider-Man PS4. Like, Peter Parker is not some rich cat like Bruce Wayne is. He actually lives among the community, and he even runs feast with his Aunt May. So he's among the community. Like, he's actually, like, putting himself in the shoes of those people that are homeless, or in the people who are constantly victims of crime. And so because he has this understanding of the struggles going on with these community members, I feel like that in some way enhances his ability to be a superhero compared to Batman, who is, you know, he's a rich cat. You know, he lives among a select few individuals, and very rarely does he ever go out into the community. He's very isolated in that sense, and I think in some way that contributes to his one-dimensional thinking when it comes to how he chooses to fight crime in Gotham, and that he's not considering the influence of police members or politics or all these other factors that likely make the justice system very, very corrupt in Gotham City. I mean, again, like the way Gotham City is portrayed, and with the way it handles its justice system, I don't know if that really falls in line with how America handles its justice system in the real world. But, you know, like, Batman isn't really considering those dimensions, because I think in some ways he has a sense of arrogance in how he feels crime should be handled. And because he's not considering those other dimensions, that's why it gives this illusion that his moral code is just holding him back, and that crime is just constantly escalating under his authority, when it's just one, it's purely because the writers want crime to escalate further to benefit that dark atmosphere of the Batman, but also because Batman doesn't really engage himself as being a member of the community, so he doesn't really understand how the police officers work, he doesn't understand how the politics work, and, you know, I feel like he's not really targeting like the real roots of corruption that actually like cause a lot of supervillains to be around, or like a lot of wars to be waged, or a lot of people to be dying. And some of those problems aren't even Batman's fault, like with what I mentioned about the corrupt cops, corrupt politicians, people that are just able to exploit the holes in the justice system to just grant them early release, or just, you know, use this as an excuse to commit more crime. Like, he's not considering those individuals at all. And that is a big problem, and that's why this version of Batman, you know, as much as I do appreciate the fact that he has this moral coding, like doing something as hard as that definitely helps in contributing to a better generation of individuals who will definitely take the fight against crime. He's not really approaching it in the correct sort of way. And, you know, like, Anarchy made a very interesting quote about this in Batman Arkham Origins, where he says that the more Batman keeps on, like, doing things himself, the less people will actually understand how to take care of themselves. And I think there was even a quote that you can unlock in Batman Arkham Knight when you do one of the Riddler challenges, where you scan a riddle and you hear you don't really hear it, you read an article that Vicky Vale made when she was interviewing Quincy Sharp. And Quincy Sharp mentions that people seem to be so reliant upon vigilantism, and there's just a level of dependency associated with that. So that's why the people aren't learning how to actually handle crime, and that's why crime is constantly, like, increasing under Batman. And, I mean, I don't feel like Rocksteady really touched upon that very well with each of the Arkham games. I mean, Warner Brothers kind of did this a bit with Batman Arkham Origins, but I don't feel like it ever got off the ground properly. And then Rocksteady completely made a mockery of Batman's moral code with one of the DLC missions that was released for Batman Arkham Knight in the Season of Infamy DLC with the Shadow of War DLC, where you're taking on the League of Assassins. And like just the way the assassins interpret Batman's moral code, and then Batman is almost like being a puppet to their actions, like just their perceptions, as if like what they're saying about Batman's moral code is true, as if it's that one-dimensional in thinking and that rigid. Like what? That's never how it's been portrayed before in the previous games. And I feel like their interpretation of Batman's moral code is such a superficial base definition of what Batman's moral code is, and it's seriously the dumbest piece of content I have ever seen for Batman Arkham Knight, and I so need to talk more about this when I get the chance. But I didn't really get the chance to talk a lot about the penitentiary area or anything related to Spider-Man in the early days of his comic years, but I'll talk more about this in the later videos. So stay tuned for that. Thank you all for watching, and you take care now.